down at DC Sound Attack here, I'm joined by the lovely Heather of the Download Takeover. Welcome, mate. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So, obviously, to those that, I mean, you're very much behind the scenes. I mean, obviously, you're up front on social media, but I mean, to those that aren't aware of who you are, could you give me a bit of an introduction into yourself?
Yeah, sure. I'm Heather. I've been going Download since the early 2000s. Actually was a regular, well, not a regular because I was a bit young, but I used to go to Monsters of Rock before that as well. So yeah, giving away my age. So I, along with my colleagues, Trish, John and Eamon, run the Download forums.
Yeah.
And we admin that. And we also admin some of the bigger Facebook groups. We do some work with Live Nation for community events across the Download weekend, mainly the Takeover, which is in the village on the Wednesday night now. It used to be on the Thursday. We also run the RIP quiz, which we have every year in RIP. And we run a kind of meet and greet, kind of food and drink session with the Live Nation team. People get invited to, people that are regulars to the festival, people that contribute to the festival, like run Facebook groups and are known amongst the Live Nation team. So yeah, so that's me. Hi.
That's a lot of jobs. Is this kind of like a 12-month thing? So you start as soon as Download's over, you start working on the next one, or is it kind of like a periodical thing?
It's an all year round thing because obviously the forums are there all year round. The Facebook groups are there all year round. Yeah, they get a lot quieter. There's a bit of a surge after the festival with everybody posting their we had a great time or photographs and stuff like that, and then it kind of quietens down throughout the winter. But there's still a lot of chit chat going on. There's still a lot of people posting things on the forums and the Facebook groups. They don't just exclusively talk about Download. They talk about gigs they've been to, gigs they're going to. We've got a politics page on the forums, so there's a wide angle like subjects that they have conversations about, and the Facebook groups are the same. Everybody's sort of like just keeps it kind of ticking over, and then around about February we start looking at kicking off the Takeover, and we start having conversations about when we're going to launch it. We wait for Live Nation to give us the 100% approval, okay, that we're definitely getting it, because we never assume that it's going to be on every year. Although it has been running since 2009, but we need to wait for their 100% approval that it's definitely going ahead this year, and then we can start working in the background to launch the submissions for the bands. And we'll kind of talk about what kind of time period we're going to do that over, when we're looking to have it finished for, bands decided for and stuff, and then I'll work with the Live Nation team to get information over to them about the bands, and so that we can set up passes for them and parking and camping and all that sort of stuff, and we can get all of their documents and things signed, because it's like they're playing Download proper. They still need to sign all the waivers and agreements and stuff, and they get free tickets for the festival as well. But yeah, it's an all year round thing. It just has peaks and troughs. And the run up to Download, like now, is mega busy. Now we're all on, it's all hands on deck on the Facebook groups and the forums, and we're having regular meetings with Live Nation to feed back to them and ask them questions for any issues that are coming up, and we do that on a regular basis anyway, but they like to get face to face with us at least once a month, and then maybe 3 or 4 months in the run up to Download. So that we can have a chat about any sort of like issues or concerns, and they can give us updates as well. So, and sometimes we can share the updates, sometimes we can't. It just depends what they tell us we can and can't share. But so we tend to get a lot of the information that, and there's maybe like they'll say, we can't talk about that until next week, or can you wait until we put something out officially, but this is what's going to happen. So we've got a really good relationship with Live Nation. We work very closely with them. I know that Ree, who runs the accessibility group as well, also has a very good relationship with the Live Nation accessibility team, and she's done a ton of work trying to improve the accessibility services for downloads. So yeah, there's not just us, there's other people as well, but we're the basic kind of the core group Trish and I are like the core group, and then we've got John and Eamon who also moderate the forums and support us as well on all our other events. So we do the RIP quiz, as I said, that we literally just put that up on the Facebook group I think yesterday, and we can only have so many teams because it's held in the Park Farm bar, the actual indoor Park Farm bar, so there's only so many seats, so we're only allowed to have, like, I think it was 11 teams, and we literally had 11 teams like that. It was in about 2 minutes flat. All the teams were submitted and gone. That's how popular it is. And then we have a wait list for it as well, so we've got people saying, oh, can I go on the wait list in case anybody pulls out. It's a really, really popular event. It's a lot of fun. I used to compare it, and I used to like ask all the patients and stuff, but when they moved the takeover to the Wednesday, because the RIP quiz is also on the Wednesday, we had to hand that baton over to Eamon, so he does it now. He does it far better as well because he's a really funny guy. So and there's prizes as well. Live Nation give us prizes to give out to people, and they're really good prizes as well. You know, we've had signed drumsticks. You know, we've got all like merch and stuff like that we can give out. So it's and a trophy. They get a trophy as well. The winning team gets a trophy as well, which we get from Live Nation. So that's really good.
There's so much that you guys do. I didn't even realise. You know, I didn't realise you guys were behind all of that.
Yeah.
With spending so much time on social media, then. What impact does that have on you? Do you kind of have to have your downtime where you back away from it for a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes, I mean, we've all got full-time jobs. You know, we've all got demanding full-time jobs as well. I mean, my job involves travelling to meetings up and down the country, so you know, I've got quite a demanding job, and I know Trish does as well. She's always like shooting off a plane somewhere or other for meetings as well. So it can get a lot, and it's really easy to let it kind of take over. Especially at this time of year on the run up to the festival, when it's just a week or so away. And I think it's probably that 2 months before the festival it really starts to ramp up quite heavily. So there is a time where we've got a group chat with all of the admins on the big Facebook group, which has got like about 70k people on it. There's quite a lot of admins on that group, so we'll literally just say, right, we're out for the next day or two. Do you know what I mean? We're too busy, we can't, you know, but if it's an emergency, let us know. Because obviously Trish and I are the bridge between Live Nation and the community. So if there's a problem, if there's a question that needs answered, if somebody's emailed Live Nation and got a weird answer back from them, they'll post it on the Facebook group, you know, as people naturally do, go, but well, they've told me this, what the hell's going on, do you know, and then we need to go back to Live Nation and say, this is what they've been told, and you know, sometimes it's just because the person's maybe misunderstood the question and given an incorrect answer, or their information's been wrong. It does happen, just like it does in any customer service function. The information's not always right, but luckily we've got that into Live Nation, and we've got somebody that we can email directly and say, you know, here's a screen dump for what they've been sent, what on earth's going on, and they'll go away and check it and come back to us with an answer. But yeah, it can kind of take over your life a fair bit, especially during takeover time. That is like a whole like 3 or 4 week period where by the end of it I'm stressed out my nut because I'm just like, I've got, you know, all these bands that have applied, I've got a panel that I'm trying to herd as well, because you know we're on a time scale. We need to provide the band information to Live Nation within a certain time period so that they can then do their thing and organise all of the parties and, you know, and camping and parking and get all the details and stuff and get all the documents signed and everything. You know, so there's a time limit there. We've got a time limit, but we've also got like maybe 12 people on a panel who are all trying to decide which ones of these bands they want to have on. And it's quite a lengthy but rapid process because we have like 500 bands apply. We'll then go through, Trish and I, and we'll go through them all, and we'll maybe remove people that we feel is maybe a band that's too big. You know, a band that's been out on tour with somebody major. You know, they don't need the takeover, because the whole idea behind the takeover is to give the band a leg up in the industry, get them a bit more notice, get them in front of a bigger audience, get them in the programme, get them in the reviews, you know, and increase their profile. So if you're already out touring with, you know, Rush or something, it's like, well, do you really need this? And then we'll kind of remove bands that, and it doesn't happen very often, but we'll remove bands that are like completely like applying for the wrong festival. They should be, they should be at Burning Man Festival or something. And maybe bands that are just not quite talented enough for it, that they're not quite
not quite ready.
I would never ever say it was terrible, because I always think bands have got to start somewhere. I used to sing in bands, and I know how rough you can be as a band when you first start. Not every band is prepackaged to be this tight outfit that's going to perform amazingly. So we'll remove some bands from that process at that point, just because they're purely not suitable, and then we'll give the band list to the panel, and we'll say to everybody on the panel, listen to all these bands, and it could be upwards of 450 bands that they're listening to, but we'll give them a week and we'll say, right, go away, listen to all these bands. I want you to make a list, nice, and I always ask for a nice tidy Excel sheet, and I never bloody get one. I'm like, oh, stop doing this to me. And I'll say, just send me a list of the bands that you think would be suitable for the takeover and that you like. And it's asking them to step out of their comfort zones and say, we're not necessarily asking you to pick something that you like. I mean, you might not like metalcore, but if you're listening to that band and they are a particularly excellent metalcore band, then you might want to stick them on your list. It's about getting people to sort of look at the different genres and look for talent, not just what they like. So I'm very clear on that right from the very start.
What do you look for in a judge then?
Somebody that first of all loves music. Somebody that is either a regular attendee at Download, or has been in the past, or is a regular on the forums, or a regular on the Facebook groups. Industry boards, we've had people like yourself on the panel. We've had journalists on the panel. We've had music, reviewers and things like that on the panel, and we tend to change it every year. We don't tend to like having the same people coming back every year. Although we are looking at changing that potentially for next year. Because I think we're running out of people to have on the panel now. But I think the main criteria for me is that, you don't need to come from a professional musical background. It's as long as you're passionate about the music, and you don't even need to have a varied taste in music, but to be open to listening to things that you wouldn't normally listen to and recognising the talent that's there. And it does work for the most part. We also invite 2 of the bands from the previous year, 2 members from we'll just have a look through it, and we'll just we'll ask these 2 to do it. So last year we had a couple of people from bands that had played last year, and they're on the panel as well, because who better to judge bands than people who've done the experience, and they know a lot of these bands that are applying. They're familiar with them, they know the process, and they love being part of it as well. That's something that I started doing quite a few years ago. I thought, we'll ask like special judges, we call them. Guest judges. For
a lot of these bands, they've it's probably their biggest gig. So for some of it, it's probably the biggest. Download is the one, isn't it? So I bet there's a lot of mixed emotions that you get backstage. How do you prepare bands ready to go on stage? Have you kind of had any bands where they so much anxiety that they can't get up and you've had to have a chat with them? Or
we've never had that. And we've had people be nervous, and I absolutely get that, because I know what it's like to be nervous before you get up on a stage and sing in front of a crowd. I did it the first year they had to download the takeover in 2009. So I've been on that stage, maybe not in front of the size of the crowds that these guys are getting, but as I say, I used to sing in bands, and I get that nervousness. And you see them walking about. Drummers are walking about spinning their sticks with looking at the ground, just pacing up and down, and I've seen them, maybe bands that are on 3rd or 4th on, and they'll have a wee peek round and they'll be like, Jesus Christ, how many people are out there? I've had that expression. But I think the biggest emotion we see backstage is excitement. These guys are just absolutely buzzing, and there's an element of nerves, but I think the excitement far exceeds that. We've never had anybody who's gone, oh no, I can't do this. We've never had anybody who's refused to, walk up that aisle at the back and get on stage. They just get on there and they smash it. In my opinion, we've never had a bad band play the Takeover. We've never had a band go on and somebody is overwhelmed or, too anxious or whatever. Yeah, there's nerves, especially like when they're pulling up and they're loading in, and they've got a very quick turnaround because we've only got 15 minutes between bands. And I think at that point they just get too busy to be even bothered by anxiety and worrying about it, and then they just go on and they do their thing. My favourite part of the day is when they come off the stage and they're high as kites and the smiles are a mile wide and they're dripping in sweat. And the first thing they do is make a beeline for me and go, "Thank you so much." And I'm just like, "What are you doing?" You got there on your own. And I get hugs from sweaty drummers and hugs from sweaty singers, and and they're all hyper and they're buzzing. And then the guys from Facebook are backstage. They grab them quickly. Once they've unloaded and got their vans, they grab them quickly for an interview, and you can just see with their faces and their presence how absolutely chuffed to bits they are that they've just done that. And some of the crowds that they're getting are just, they just seem to they give us a bigger tent, which is the big white tent in the village now, because I think we had the old third stage tent previously, but the tent that they've given us now is absolutely enormous, and the headline band last year just about near filled it, and I think the year that Cabin Boy jumped ship played, I can't remember what year that was now, 2017 I think, 2018, that was the biggest opening crowd that we've had to that point as well, because the guys in Cabin Boy Jump Ship just know how to market the hell out of themselves, which was really good. So they pulled in a massive big crowd, but yeah, there's a lot of like they get little dressing rooms. Well, they're little cabins. They get little cabins, and they get some beer, and they get some cider, and they get some water, and and they're all dead hyper and buzzing, and their managers are sometimes there, and sometimes they've always got a couple of guys to help them with their gear. Sometimes we've got girlfriends back there as well, and boyfriends. It's like Jesus. But yeah, I'm usually running about backstage, just making sure everybody's okay, and just asking them if they're feeling all right, and saying to them, like it's nearly time, just let's get our shit together, but it's just a really exciting, buzzing, positive atmosphere backstage. We also have 2 DJs that play in between sets for us, and John and Chris, and they've been doing it for years now. Very good friends of mine. Chris can usually be found wandering about the backstage with, trying to get me drunk, which usually works as well. But at the end of it, once that last band comes off and they've done their interview and they're all heading back to their camp and away to enjoy the rest of their festival, because they get tickets for the whole weekend, they get to then relax and enjoy the festival. They get camping, and they get parking for their vans and whatnot. And once that's done, that's when the exhaustion hits me, because I'm on my feet literally from, I think the first bands usually check in at about 2, so I'm on my feet, I'm up there about maybe midday, so I'm on my feet from like 12 o'clock to like 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night, and I don't stop. I very rarely sit down, and take a breather. I'm just constantly running about, and I'm always front of house to make sure, and I'm going into the crowds, making sure everything sounds okay, and that there's no sound issues. I'm taking photographs as well so that I can do the social, the socials and all that, and get the bands on the Takeover Facebook group. So and it was after that last band goes off, and then that's me. I'm done. The next sort of acts then go on after that, and my feet are killing me, my legs are killing me, my back's killing me.
And you got the whole festival to go.
I'm starving, because I've forgotten to eat again. Because I can never really I always intend to quickly jump out to one of the food stalls and grab something to eat, and it never happens. I think last year I had my kids with me, and they're adults, they're like 28 and 26, but you know, my son had to go and get me something to eat because he was like, you look like you're just a bit all over. You know, it's like, but it's hyper, but when you stop, it's like you're running at 100 miles an hour and then you just boom, stop.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like your whole body just goes, oh, I'm done now. So yeah, I usually just wander back through the village, grab something to eat, you know, maybe say hello to a few people and go back to camp, because we camp in our IP every year. And go back to camp and take my shoes off and just put my feet up and have a drink, and I'm usually in my bed for about 11:30. So
I bet you've seen some amazing sights on that stage though. Who are some of your, like, over the years that you've been doing it, some of your top bands that you pick out?
My God.
Big question.
You know, I think I'd have to say the absolute, and all the bands are amazing. But as I said, there's not been a bad set from any band we've put on that stage, not a single one, and they've all been very well received by the crowd. But the band who really stood out for me were Red Method.
Yeah.
And bless them, they waited 2 years to play that stage because they got picked, and then COVID hit, and then the festival got cancelled. So we were like, right, okay, we can't do anything. That was just the way it was. There was nothing we could do. It was out of our hands. And then the next year rolled round, and we weren't sure if we were going to and then they cancelled it again. And I was like, oh, for God's sake, man! So it's like, what? So then the next year came round, and obviously we had the download the first year back, and Red Method. It was the year we had the outdoor stage because Live Nation couldn't get any of the covered tents hired because there were so many events happening. Yeah. Because we'd had these couple of years when nothing was happening because of COVID, and then suddenly everybody wanted to have their events like sort of like now. So we had no tents. You know, we had like, you know, we were struggling to get, you know, like toilets and things like that for the backstage area, which we did manage to get. I think we had one portaloo behind backstage. It was not pleasant at all. And we had this tiny, in comparison to the stage that we usually have, the outdoor stage was tiny. And you had Red Method, who are this massive, energetic, heavy band, and they just looked like the stage was just going to explode at any minute because they bring so much energy to their set. But when you looked at from the stage up, and we had the big sort of
it was outside that year.
It was outside that year. It was beautiful weather as well, which was really nice. It was lovely and sunny on the Wednesday, and they also said as well, we're changing it to the Wednesday, and I had a mini meltdown because I was like, right, it's on the Thursday, most people come on the Thursday, oh my God, nobody's going to turn up, the bands are going to go on. I had a little bit of a back and forth with them about starting times. I managed to get a slightly later starting time with them, they agreed to that, but they definitely wanted it on the Wednesday because they wanted to do like podcasts and stuff on the Thursday instead. And I was having an absolute meltdown, Trish will tell you. I was losing my mind because I was utterly convinced it was going to be a complete failure. And that year it was just like wall-to-wall people. Yeah. You couldn't see the back where the people were. I mean, I remember my son was at the very, very back, standing on a picnic table, and he messaged me and he said, there's literally no standing room back here. He's like, I can't even get off this table because I've nowhere to go. I'm just going to have to stay here until it finishes, because it was, and I think we'd had 2 years in a row, like no download, very rare, very few live music events. A lot of stuff was getting cancelled. People were really, really hungry to listen to bands, to get some live music in front of them. Loads of people turned up, and it actually hasn't really made much of a difference at all having it on the Wednesday rather than the Thursday, with the exception of the year that we had the 20th anniversary and all the traffic issues happened. One of the bands almost didn't make it that day as well. I think they got there about 10 minutes before their set, and I was having a full-on meltdown thinking they weren't going to turn up because they were stuck in traffic, as were half the crowd. And I felt really bad for the first couple of bands that went on, because they went on to not anywhere near the same size of crowd that they would normally be welcomed by, but they absolutely made the most of it. They put on a really good set. It was fab, but that first year Red Method absolutely blew that place away. They killed it. It was so good. People were stage diving, and they were crowd climbing, clambering, crowd surfing over the. I'd never seen that before at the Takeover. I was like, what the hell's going on? And I'm taking photographs of these people. We had to get extra security and everything because they were all just going nuts. But we hadn't had download for 2 years, so people were
got a lot to get off their chest.
Yeah, they had a lot to do with their with their energy. So but it was really good. But yeah, it's been good on the Wednesday ever since. And last year and the year before we did have some really big crowds, and I think some of the bands were really blown away because a lot of them, as you said earlier, they haven't played in front of crowds that size before, or crowds that into what they're listening. Because you know what it's like for these up and coming bands. They go and play a gig in a small club somewhere, and the crowd are just kind of standing there with a pint in their hands. You've also always got that little group of hardcore fans that are going mental, but most people are just kind of, this is all right. There's that energy the crowd brings as well.
With their hands
like watch, and I've done it myself. Leaning against the post at the back, and the crowd bring their own energy to the takeover, and the bands bring the energy, and they just collide in the middle, and it's just phenomenal. They go absolutely nuts. And I think a lot of the bands this year as well, we've had a lot of good feedback in the comments on the Takeover page about, oh yeah, I know these guys, I really like them, or I can't wait to see these guys. All the bands have got their own sort of followings that are dedicated to coming and seeing them, and so many people are like, oh, we need to get there really early on the Wednesday now so that we can get our tent up, and I'm like, that's great, brilliant, get your tent up, grab a beer, come and see us.
You still say that you have 400, 500 plus applications each year. What advice would you give to anybody that's applying for the Takeover?
I think one of the biggest questions I get is it okay to send in does it need to be a professional video? It doesn't. It doesn't need to be. We've had bands that have got slots on that stage on the back of mobile phone footage. It just needs to be live, and that can either be, we've had people send in camcorder footage, proper professional HD camera footage. We've had people send in fan videos from people on mobile phones. We've had people send in studio sessions, which we kind of try and dissuade, because there's a lot more you can do in a studio with sound that you can't really do when it's live on a stage, and I know they have mixing desks and things like that, but it's a lot easier to do. So we try and avoid we try and say, no, we don't want any studio footage unless it's live studio footage, and by that I mean them all together in a room in a studio playing and somebody filming it, but they're playing live and it's not through like a mixing desk or anything like that. We'll have that, but it doesn't need to be anything at all. There's no particular criteria for it other than just not a studio session. We get quite disappointed when we see bands who are clearly very, very talented, but they're just kind of standing on the stage, not really bringing any energy to it. And we're kind of like, you need to be a bit more energetic, and you can tell a mile away how much better a band is when they actually get into what they're doing and move around and interact with the crowd. And we look for that. We look for that interaction. I
suppose it's a big crowd. They're going to be entertaining, isn't it? So they've got to be entertainers.
Yes. You can't just have 5 guys on the stage just standing there looking like playing and singing. They need to bring their characters and their energy and interact with the audience, and all the bands that have played all do that. So that's something else that we look for as well. The Change Persona sent in live footage, and they're kind of like a punky kind of band. And as soon as I saw it, I just smiled. I was like, oh my god, look at they just remind me of like the energy of an old school punk band where they're all just bouncing around and having a great time, and they're clearly loving what they do. So we need that energy. We need, obviously they need to be able to play. We need them to be, we need them to be kind of like a tight outfit, that play well together, that look good together, that that obviously and have good music. But to be fair, if we have 500 odd bands, and Trish and I listen to every single one of them, we listen to every single one of them, and as I say, there's it's not very often we come across a band where we go, oh, they're not quite ready, they're not tight enough, they're not cohesive enough. They maybe just need another couple of years of playing together and blending and getting their sound perfected, and then try again. And we've had bands that have applied for like multiple years and haven't got through to the shortlists. And then 1 year they'll apply and they're just boom, they're headlining. You know, and that's not because sometimes that's not even because they're maybe not quite cohesive enough or professional enough to start with, but sometimes it's just that they don't quite hit the mark. There are other bands that the panel prefers. 2-year break, for example, I think that's the 4th year they've applied.
Yeah.
And I think 3 out of 4 of those years they were in the shortlist.
Yeah.
And I love 2-year break, right? I have been a 2-year break fan for quite some time. I know their manager. She's had other bands play the Takeover as well.
Yeah.
So I know Marianne very well. And I don't do a shortlist. I don't choose bands. I keep the conversation flowing. I'll try and encourage the panel to talk about the bands and ask them what they like about them. And the less bands there are to choose from, the harder it gets.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of there as a sort of like, you know, just making sure everybody's, you know, doing what they're supposed to be doing in the panel.
Your job's to keep the conversation going.
Yes, keep the conversation going and do organise all the admin stuff in the background. But so and I do that. That's an intentional thing from me because I know a lot of people in the industry. I know a lot of bands in the industry, and I know a lot of managers of bands that have played the Takeover that have also got band. I mean, this is you get certain managers who send us bands every single year.
Yeah.
And I need to remain impartial to that. Yeah. I can't, you know, it would be very easy for me just to go, oh, 2-year break are really good, let's put them on. Yeah. But that wouldn't be fair because then it's just a Heather show. And I have actually been accused of that before, and it's absolutely not. Years ago on the Takeover Facebook group, I had a guy that actually accused me of pay for play. And I was like, mate, if you can find a band that has paid me to play that stage, I will literally give you my salary for a whole year. I was like, because it's never happened. It absolutely never happened. And then he said, oh, just you keep putting all your mates' bands on. And I'm like, that's not what I didn't even pick the bands. I'm the organiser. I'm not the panel. You know, yeah. That's why we put a panel in place.
Yeah.
Was because it used to be when the Takeover first started in 2009, it was basically a bunch of people off the forums, including myself, who could sing or tell jokes. We had a couple of comedians, we had a couple of bands, we had 2 solo singers, one of which was me, and we had a burlesque dancer.
Yeah.
And that was just because, you know, Carrie and Phil at the time, who ran the forums, had been asked to do something with that stage on a Thursday night by Live Nation. And they just said, we'll provide the backline and everything, you just do everything else, tell the bands to bring the breakables, backing tracks, whatever, and you know, they can play. And that's what we did. And then I think after a few years we had like about 50 bands that had kind of made noise about wanting to play it. So at that we kind of thought, but then it was just me, Phil and Carrie picking the bands at that point, because I had sang in it in 2009 and then I had done the photography for a few years. And then Phil said, come on and help me pick some bands. So that was at that stage just the 3 of us choosing the bands out of I think the first year we had bands apply, there was about 25 bands applied, and then the next year it was 50.
Was that when it was off the Download Festival website? So obviously for a good while it was off the actual forum on the website.
It was actually off the forums, because what we were trying to do is because there are a lot of bands on the forums, and what we were trying to do was we were trying to get people on the forums who were in bands on the stage, because it was part of the community. But it very quickly, when Carrie and Phil decided to step back from the Takeover and the forums, they gave the Takeover to me, and Phil basically said, here, run with it, do what you want with it, it's yours. So right from the get-go, I was like, right, we've now got, I think we'd had about 120 bands apply that year, and I'm like, right, what's the fairest way to do this? And I'm like, right, so I'm not picking the bands, but let's get some other people who are music fans, music industry people, you know, members of bands that have played before, let's get them in a room, you know, and get them to pick the bands, because that's fair. And then I can't get accused of, you know, only putting on my mates' bands. I was like, I know far too many people in the industry that I couldn't possibly pick, you know. But so when 2-year break applied 4 years running and didn't get picked, I was absolutely gutted for them. Every year, and I was like, oh, they were so close. At one point they were so close, they were literally down to them and another band, and the panel picked the other band. So I was like, I was absolutely delighted for them this year when they did get through again to the shortlist, and they did get picked. And again, it was touch and go, because there was another couple of bands that they were all kind of like, oh, you know, maybe like these ones, and I'm like, right, well, I need an answer by Sunday, so get me an answer by Sunday. And I said to them, basically, because they couldn't pick they were really struggling to I think we got down to like about 9 bands, and they were really struggling to get that final 6 picked at that point. And I just said to them, right, what you need to do is you need to send me a list of the 6 bands out of those 9 that you want to play the takeover. And then I had to throw them all on a spreadsheet and just add them all up, and the bands that showed up on the most spreadsheets got they got the slot. And as I was counting them, 2-year break were bouncing between 6th and 7th place. And I was like, oh my god, this is so stressful. But then I have Trish check it as well, so that she's obviously, just for clarity and for fairness, we get Trish to check it as well to make sure that I've counted it all up properly. And they got through this year, so I was really happy with them. But some of these bands that are on this year, it's their first time applying. Allears Avow I've never applied before. Collapse the Sky I don't think I've ever applied before. And I don't remember seeing Exist Immortal on that. So I think there's a lot of new. I think one of these, I know 2-year break I've obviously applied quite a lot of times, but it might have been Collapse the Sky actually that had applied before. But yeah, there's been other bands. I mean, I've this is just be the face of the takeover. You get all sort of things thrown at you. But yeah, I mean, I've had people in bands message me because they thought it was a likes thing.
Yeah.
Because we don't do it anymore, but we used to put every band that applied, we used to put their video on the Facebook page, and we stopped doing that a number of years ago.
I remember that. Yeah.
But we used to put their wee video on it, and it would kind of get the page a bit of interaction, and people would be commenting and liking it and stuff like that. And then when the band didn't get through, the guy messaged me infuriated and said, this is my video got more likes than all those other bands. And I was like, it's not a like competition. You're going to go down and get all your mum and dad's friends down at the social club to come and like your video. That's not fair, is it? See, we never ever sold it like that. We never ever said that was what it was. And he was like, right, okay, that's fair enough. Do you know what I mean? I think he'd assumed that was what it was. Yeah. And then, and that was such a long time ago. But then a couple of years later, they headlined it.
Did I?
And I won't tell you who they were because I don't want to out anybody, because it was just a misunderstanding. It wasn't, he wasn't like throwing his toys out the pram or anything. He was just a bit annoyed because he had misconstrued how it was working. Yeah. And that's why we stopped putting the videos on the Facebook page as well. And we now have a forum that they can link, and they send us all of their band details and contact details, but they also send us a live footage video, and they have an option of putting an edited video in there as well if they want to, because we can see a lot from the edited videos as well. And it's nice to see how creative they are with our music videos. But yeah, that's fun. We've had I've had a few disagreements with people over the years, but my conscience is clear. I know that everything's done fairly. I know that everything's done. Like nobody can say that it's not fair, because it absolutely 100% is fair. I mean, one of my very good friends submitted I think about 8 or 9 of his bands this year, and not a single band got through. So and that's somebody that I'm really good friends with on socials and stuff, and that I've met and has had a band play the Takeover before. It's not. It's got to be a fair process. It's only fair to the bands. And we can't have bands applying more than once, because we have so many bands applying. It would be incredibly unfair of us to say, oh, well, we know you played 5 years ago, but you can play again this year. That's not that. So that's one hard and fast rule we have. If you've played the Takeover before, that's it. You don't get to play again. Unless we make it to like the 30th anniversary of the Takeover or something, and we decide to do a special headliners of the last 30 years sort of thing, and we handpick bands to come. We've toyed with that idea before, but I don't know if I will ever do that, because there are so many bands that want to play that stage. It's not like we're not the main stage. We don't have 5 stages to cover or 4 stages to cover and all day to do it. So we don't have any repeats, basically. It's always a fresh lineup. But yeah, it's good. But I would say any bands that are interested in playing is to obviously follow and like our Takeover page on Facebook, Takeover at Download, and just keep an eye out for announcements. We usually start talking about opening up submissions around about February time, so that'll be February next year. And yeah, they just need to wait for the submissions to go live after that, and then they can submit their footage.
Amazing, mate. Mate, there's so much insight here, and you've been fantastic to talk to.
No, you really will.
So Takeover hits download a week on Wednesday.
A week on Wednesday, wow!
A week on Wednesday.
Do you say that? It's like.
So I've got so much to do.
Wednesday. I thought I had weeks to go. I'm like, I've got all time in the world. It's fine. It's going.
Headline by Immortal, 2-year break, Dacara, change persona, claps to the sky. Allears, Avow. It's going to be a great night.
Oh, I can't wait! I'm so excited. I'm just loving every single band that's playing this year, and I was, you know, and I think I'm hoping that we've got the male to female ratio a little bit better this year as well. That's not a consideration, by the way, but I have been called out for that by a band on my stage while they were on my stage. Who basically called out, "Oh, there's not enough women on the lineup," and I was like, I'm not going to give somebody a slot on the Takeover just because there's a female in the band. That's really unfair to all the other. But what we do is we try as much as we possibly can to encourage as many female artists and band members to bands with female artists and drummers and guitarists and whatnot to apply. And we did that this year on International Women's Day. And we put a post up saying, it's International Women's Day, tag all of your female friends that are in bands and let them know about this. And it worked. We did have a much higher quota of females to male ratio that applied this year, and I think that reflects in the lineup as well, because we've got, you know, 2 or 3 bands with females in them, which is really good to see. I mean, I love women in music. It's really disappointing when there's not enough female artists and bands with females in them that apply every year. So we are making a conscious effort to try and, you know, encourage them to apply. It's good, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the bands this year. And I know there's a bit of a buzz for the Takeover this year, like there usually is, and I'm really looking forward to meeting, you know, the crowd as well. And I'm always backstage, front of stage, and the crowd. You know, if anybody's there and recognises me, I'm always happy for people to come over and say hello. You know, and a lot of the times they do as well. They'll give me a wave or whatever. If I've been in the main arena on a Saturday night and somebody's come up behind me and went, "Are you in?" And I'm like, what? And he's like, "Oh, love the Takeover." I'm like, "Oh, brilliant, yeah, great." And it's really good. It's a really good feeling to know that people are enjoying the entertainment that you're putting on for them, and that the bands are absolutely loving it as well. So it's a win-win.
Well, thank you very much, Eb, for your time.
No, you're more than welcome.
And I wish you all the best of luck for a week on Wednesday.
Thank you. Yep. If I've got any feet left by the end of it. But thanks very much for having me on to talk about our little event. I really appreciate it.
No.